My name is Nicolae Barbece, and I'm from Romania. My name is not Nicolae Barbece, but because I'm from Romania, we roll our R's. So most people in other countries don't do that, so I quickly became Nicolae Barbecue, which is easier, so hey. And I founded a small team called Those Awesome Guys. We are from basically all over the world. We work remotely, and I think we're 6 at this point, which is still quite a big number. But have you ever had a conversation with somebody who goes like, oh yeah, I'm in a small team of 26? Sure. Cool, so I made a game called Move or Die. It's a weird 4-player friendship ruining game. And I go to a lot of events to like meet with friends and people and talk about video games. And I was thinking how I should show this, like how many events I've been to. And I took a photo of some badges when I started working on these slides. And by the time I finished working on the slides, I had to take another photo. That one is not an event there, ignore that. Also this one, because of course we're at a maze. So today I'm going to talk about how to showcase your game. And based on that animation alone, you shouldn't trust me. I'm going to split this talk in 3 parts. Before, during, and after the event. And in order to make things a little bit easier, I'm going to put a timer up there that basically shows you when to do what I'm talking about. So by the way, how many of you here are working on a project that might show at an event? Perfect. Cool. So let's start. Before the event, the first thing you have to do is decide that you want to apply to go to an event. So you have a bunch of options when it comes to this. Like, what are you looking for? If you're looking for press, you might go at E3. If you're looking for players, go to Gamescom. If you're looking for developers, GDC or Steam Dev Days. If you want to meet people in suits talking about CPM and retention rates, go to Casual Connect, if that's your thing. And if you have like weird stuff, you're at the right place. So don't go alone. Tag along a group. And this is super important because when you go alone, there's a lot of costs and a lot of logistics you have to worry about, and that's super tricky when it comes to a small team, especially if you haven't done this before. So what I recommend is tag along a curated group, like in the Mega booth, in the Arena booth. All these are awesome groups moderated by awesome people where you basically submit your game, and if you're accepted, you get to go to an event with a group of other developers, which lowers the costs quite a bit, and you don't have to worry about rentals and booth space and all that stuff. You can go with a group, a country group, which is like Sweden Game Arena, or like in Romania, we have Romanian Games Developers Association, which might be sponsored by governments and lower the costs even more. So check around if you have something like this in your country, it might help a lot. There's also weird groups where more or less you apply directly, which also applies to these events here, where you talk directly with the organizers, not through somebody else. So I see you take photos of these because it's like quite a bit of information, and it's very tricky to find all these things online. So I made a Venn diagram of all the events, all like the major events and the groups that go to those events. So just look for the event you want to go to and see what options you have within that circle. If you can take a photo of this right now, just send me an email. I'm going to send you the slides. Now, next up, pricing. Prices are super weird because they vary a lot, and it's on a case-by-case basis. And these are the prices that I spent and threw at various events. Each tower is a different event in order of how much money I spent on it, and it's broken down into like rentals and booth and housing and traveling. So as you can see, it goes from like $200 for a local event up to $7,000, which is a lot of money. But yeah, you would find more about costs when it in blog posts and postmortems from other teams who went at events and talk about these kind of things. But here's an example. I went to GDC in 2013 when I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I still don't. But I paid $3,400 for that small kiosk. And that's a lot of money. Also, it was quite a low price because initially they like tried to squeeze money out of you by printing like promotional stuff for you, which is super expensive. So I said, fuck that, and I printed my own thing, and I was on the booth with double-sided tape. So yeah, as a different example, I paid $745 for a local event where I had this weird setup with the two monitors, and right out of the bat, that this looks much better than the GDC one. And a different example, this is how I started. I just walked around events with my laptop in my backpack, and I just put it on an empty table with some business cards. Don't do this. I mean, or if you do, I didn't tell you to. Right, so that's applying. Next up, travel and housing. When you go to an event, I usually recommend booking 2 days before the event, so you have time to set up your booth. You might think things won't go wrong, but they will. You will be fixing bugs on your Airbnb couch, which is super fun. And also book 1 day after the event, because it's a great time to see the city. You might catch up on potential meetings you missed, and so on and so forth. Location-wise, make sure you book close to the event, because again, shit will go wrong, and you will have to run back and forth to your place to like maybe get that extension cord you forgot. And as an example, this is where I'm staying, and this is where Amaze is. It's like 5 minutes walk, so that helps. So that's travel and housing. Next up, parties. Parties are super freaking important because that's basically where you get to meet a lot of cool people away from this sterile kind of event mood, especially at events like GDC and PAX. It's very hard to actually have a meaningful conversation on the show floor. So parties are great, but the problem is they sell out weeks before and they go out really, really fast. For example, at GDC, that party sold out in 3 minutes. So you want to look out for those. And luckily, there are a lot of community-made like Google Docs with all the parties. And if you just search Eventbrite or Facebook, you're good. Just make sure you do this in time, like 1 to 3 weeks before the event. Prints. Now, this is a very, very passionate subject for me because when you go to an event, you need to like get yourself out there, and you have to have your game logo and your company on as many things as you can, so you can make banners, shirts, business cards, whatever. But a very important thing is colors. I think colors are super important because, for example, what company is this? Exactly. What? Xbox. Jeez. What about this one? Cool. What about this one? Exactly. So, yeah, colors are super important because you can identify companies super easily just from their colors. And you might be thinking, oh, God, I have to be this huge company to do this. But you don't. This is Tiny Build. This is like not that huge of a company, but they have this super, super aggressive orange. And it helps because when you see a person dressed in this aggressive orange, you know they're from Tiny Build. I'm not from Tiny Build. So they don't only have this in their banners, they also have it in their lanyards and in their shoes. And here's a different example. Sweden Game Arena, they have this super aggressive pink. Have you seen a different event that has? So yeah, when you see somebody like dressed in pink, they're from Sweden Game Arena. So that's awesome that you can do this. It helps a lot. When it comes to business cards are super important. It's basically a rectangle of information with your stuff on it, and it makes it easy for people to contact you. And I had this business card long time ago about my game. By the way, Move or Die is a game where if you don't move, your health drains and you explode. So I had this card where it was in an envelope, and when you pull out the card, the character's health drained, and it showed as an exploded character on the card. So I had people come up to me and be like, oh, I don't care about your game, but your card is freaking amazing. The tricky part with these cards was that they were super expensive to make, and I had to manually put each card in each envelope. So this is how the day before the event is going to look like in your hotel room, while also ironing a bed sheet as a tablecloth. So yeah, roll-up banners. Now, if you're gonna make roll-up banners, please make sure that you you put the logos as high as possible. Because when you're at an event, you are surrounded by people, and the only thing you can see is from the shoulder up, and everything below that is invisible. And if you do something like this, not a lot of people will remember the name of your game or how your logo looks. So put them as high as possible. Last week, I was at Reboot in Croatia, and I saw this banner. Do you see where the game title is? It's in the bottom left. That's weird. And not only because it's in the bottom left, it was weird because they had a different roll-up banner which looked like this, which is perfectly fine. So that was very confusing. But yeah, put your logos as high as possible. Flyers. Now, when it comes to flyers, stop it. They fucking suck. They don't work. I'm really curious. So did anybody get a flyer and like put it in their pockets and went back home and get it out of your pocket and actually went to the website on that flyer? Like, do a lot of people? Yeah, there's not a lot of people. Okay, so yeah, I fucking hate flyers. Have you seen these tables at events? This is not where you pick up a flyer from. This is where flyers go to die. They're all dropped off there, and if they don't end up there, they end up on the floor. And we've all seen these at the end of events, just somebody sweeping them off. And if you're gonna make flyers, that's where they're gonna end up. Instead, just make business card sized flyers. Just get all the information on a flyer and put it on a business card, because it's much, much easier and it's more manageable. I can just get this and put it in my wallet. It actually fits in my wallet. It's amazing. So for Move or Die, we basically put the game logo and 3 bullet points about the game, the website, and on the back, we had a photo of a random character and their description, and they had this collectible feel to them. So that was cool. Now, if you're gonna showcase your game at an event, you can be smart about it and you can adjust your game. So, for example, in Move or Die, we had this thing called convention mode, which was an option that you could toggle on and off. And when you toggled it on, it changed a bunch of things about the game. For example, when you normally play Move or Die, you get to pick how long you're gonna play it for. You can say like 10 or 15 minutes a session. And when convention mode is on, the game doesn't ask you that anymore, and it automatically sets itself to 5 minutes. Aside from that, it runs on its own. It restarts automatically when the match ends. Because it was quite buggy, it crashed oftentimes, and we had a different program running in the background checking if the game is running, and if it wasn't running, it restarted the game. And a trick, if you do that, make your wallpaper the loading screen of the game, and nobody's gonna notice. It's gonna look like super smooth. So yeah, if your game is multiplayer, fill in any empty slots with AI, because there will be times when only one guy will show up at your booth and pick up the controller and look left and right and then leave. So you don't want to end up in that situation. Make sure anybody can play the game at any time. And if your game has an unlocking system, make sure you unlock everything, or if not everything, enough to show what your game has to offer, because nobody's going to grind for that legendary item on the show floor. Also, another thing about filling in empty slots, you can also basically make it plug and pick up and play, which is very important for a party game. In my case, I made sure you can pick up a controller at any time and jump in the game without having to interrupt the session and be like, oh, no, wait, let's go back to the menu, I want to join in. So I think that helps a lot. Idle cards. This is what shows up on the screen if the game doesn't get any input for like a minute. And it's basically a short video loop showing how the game looks like, and it incentivizes players to pick up the controller. And this is cool because it's a bit more engaging than just a menu screen, which might be a bit cold. So these are super easy to make, and they look super professional. You also might want to create a safe environment. In Move or Die, when convention mode is on, you're stuck in the character selection screen and you can't go back. So this prevents you from going into the video settings and messing around with the resolution or potentially fucking up the experience for future players. So you just keep players in the character selection screen. And there are many other game adjustments, but these are some of the ones I made for Move or Die, which helped a lot at events because you don't have to be at the booth constantly if the game runs on its own. So that helps. Packing. Now, if you're going to go to an event and showcase your game, you want every single item on this list in your luggage. And they're all super important because if you don't need them, your neighbor will. And if you don't have them, you'll be super grateful that your neighbor has them. So every single one, trust me, you're going to need them. They're super helpful. And most importantly, aside from all of these, you're going to need throat lozenges because you will lose your voice if you don't take care of it. And it's pretty shitty if you're at an event and you can't talk. Or you can get a little bottle of honey, which is something I do, and you just chug on it every now and then. But you get some weird looks, but it works. So that's cool. A quick tip, throw in an extension cord because it's going to be super helpful and you'll basically become a hero at the airport. So that's packing. Next up, controls. Now, it's a little bit weird, but I advise avoiding keyboards. Now, a keyboard has 100+ keys. How many keys is your game using? Probably 10 or so, if not less. Now, keyboards are slightly intimidating depending what event you're showing at. Not everybody might be like a hardcore gamer. Some people might get intimidated when they see a keyboard. So, for example, I saw this cool thing that the Behemoth do with their games, and this is so fucking cool. It's basically an Xbox controller remapped to some fancy-looking buttons, and based on the controller alone, I went to try that game, which says something. But then again, you're at a maze, so your game might be controlled by a banana, or a watermelon, or like air pipes, or a shotgun, or a turntable. You're at the maze. But yeah, if you're gonna use a keyboard, if your game uses a typewriter, that's perfectly fine because your game is like made around that. However, I felt a bit sorry for that guy at the expo with the typing game. That looks super intimidating. But yeah, if I advise using controllers, and if you're gonna use a controller, go wired because there might be a lot of interference at the event. You don't have to worry about batteries if you have a wired controller, and most importantly, because people steal shit. And yeah, for example, at Gamescom, I had these cute little plexiglass characters, and every time I wasn't looking at the booth, one was disappearing. And like by the end of the first day, I didn't have any characters left. One thing you could do is get one of these things, which I'm not sure where you would get it from, but a quick Amazon or eBay search would fix that problem. It's basically a cable that bolts into your controller, and it helps keeping it in place. If you have a game that's on a mobile phone or a tablet, you can get one of those holders. Or you could do what Team Meat did, which I think is freaking awesome, which is just get a huge touchscreen. And this is a great way of showing your mobile game, not only because it's super easy to interact with, but also because you can have spectators around you looking at you playing the game, which is super important because usually with the phone, it's like up to your face and it's only for you. At an event, it helps having more people see the game. Don't rent screens from the venue. I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate saying this, but usually venues that rent out screens, they usually go very expensive, and I'm pretty sure you can get a much better deal if you look at the local rental companies in that area. At least that's what I did at the conventions I went to. So that's controls. Now, you got to the event, and what's the first thing you do? You build your booth. When it comes to building booths, a super important thing is height. This is from Gamescom, and that's our booth. It says Move or Die. You can tell it's Move or Die because there's a huge banner. And right next to us, it's a very cool game called Epistory, and you can tell that because you can see their banner. But right next to it, it's another cool game that I cannot name because you can't see their banner. So height is important. And that's why you see these huge cylindrical banners on the ceiling, because the first thing you see is everything that's on top. So yeah, again, back to that setup. I managed to get that 2 TV setup thing, and that was super awesome. The shitty part is that that stand for TVs is super expensive. But yeah, having spectators be able to watch the game from like 5 meters back, that's pretty cool. Another interesting, cheap way of going about this is using balloons and spelling out the name of your game out of helium balloons that just stay up on their own. The shitty part is when one of them deflates and they might spell something else. But yeah, it's a cheap way of doing it. So yeah, while I was at Reboot in Croatia, most showcases were on small laptops on a table, and the highest thing was that circle thing, and you can see how it gets your attention because it's the only thing sticking up from everybody else. So height is super, super important. And even here, when you go in the expo, try looking around and see what game gets your attention, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Fugel, because holy shit, that's amazing. So do that. If not, you could use plates to slightly raise your laptop. Sound. Now, sound is also a very important topic because when you're at an event, you're surrounded by super big, loud companies, and the reason why you're there is to get people at your booth, so you're all competing for attention. And if you have like some small speakers, you're gonna think they're good enough, but they're not. So what I recommend is getting one of these portable amps, which are pretty cheap. The thing is, when you're gonna test out one of these amps, you're gonna be like, oh my God, this is really, really loud. But the thing is, they're not as loud as you think they are because sound behaves completely different when the booth is surrounded by a crowd of people. Just ask any sound technician or musician in this room. But yeah, these are luckily pretty cheap and they do a great job at events. The shitty part is if you have a game that highly relies on sound and you need to use headphones, which I advise you avoid because if you use headphones, you end up in that situation where the player has like one cup on the ear and another off the ear and talks to you while playing the game, and it's kind of weird. So I try avoiding headphones because I usually like talking with the person playing my game at the booth. But yeah, it differs from a game-to-game basis. Lights. I got some cheap Christmas lights and I put them around the TV edge, and they look super cool. And the thing about lights is, as a visitor, when you walk on the show floor and you look at all the booths, most of them are static. And when something flickers, your eyes are gonna go there subconsciously. And this helps a lot with getting people at your booth. If not, you could get a more direct approach, which is also cool, but hey. Also, if you can get a TV topper by basically printing your game logo on a piece of cardboard and duct taping it on the back of the TV, and it looks professional as fuck. I mean, look at that, holy shit. You can see the seam in the middle, pretend it's not there, but yeah, this is a super cheap way of making it look professional. Buy food before the doors open because you're gonna think you have enough time, but you won't, unless you have a system in place of like part of the team going and getting the food while you stay at the booth. It's insane. Once the doors open, you don't have time to do anything else, so make sure you have everything you need before that happens. Film everything. You can get basically shots of the crowd, you can get interviews, a reaction cam. For interviews, you can just have a friend with a phone record the audio while you ask questions. I have this weird camera on my hip that I can just take out at any time and smile. Cool. So that helps because it's kind of shitty to go to an event and not have anything to show after it. And regarding the reaction cam, I tried this weird thing at an event where I basically put a webcam on the monitor pointed at the crowd, and I just set it to record the entire time of the event. And it looks like that. And you might be thinking, oh my God, I don't want to go through like 3 days worth of footage after the event to find the interesting parts. But the cool thing about it is, if your webcam records audio, you just look at the audio waves, and wherever there's a peak, either somebody yelled or everybody clapped. So when you put all of this together, you end up with something like this, which was one of the promotional videos from Overdye.
Take a shit off for this one. Twist up in the air. Let's go back. You ready?
I liked it. It kind of took that old arcade style, but like mixed it up a lot.
I thought it was really fun. I mean, it's a good party game.
I was sad to put down the controller.
This would be a great drinking game, and I totally agree.
Boom, boom, let me go. Where I go, there I go. Oh, no, I go do the show.
Do you think it's better than Halo 5?
Yes! Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Hands down.
Something's got me started.
It was chaotic.
And it's instantly understandable.
It was easy to pick up.
Very intense, and it doesn't even give you time to think about why it's intense.
I love it. I smoked my girlfriend in it, and I took everybody else down, and it felt great. It was excellent. I loved it.
Now I'm moving really fast cause I'm right near the building. Welcome everybody, adults into the children. The guitars, the bass, the drum, the rup-a-pup-a-pum, the dum-dee-dee-dee-dum, dee-dee-dee-dee-dum.
What would you like to see in the game as a character?
Beard. Character that is just a beard.
Yeah.
Probably like a demon character, I think.
This game screams the need for cats. It needs cats.
A balloon with a marker face drawn on. Maybe Kirby.
I think Nintendo would hate us for that, but
You can rip it off. It's not like a solid design. You know what I mean?
Something's got me started. Like a super shorted. I really want it now. I'm far gonna go. For you to realize it's nothing to show. Something's got me started.
So yeah, this helps. Mostly because you can use it as marketing material. It helps a lot. Because if you go to an event and you don't record anything, you end up with people asking you, hey, how was the event? And you go like, it was cool, but I don't have anything to show. So having something like this is awesome. So that's filming. Next up, giveaways. Now, if you've been to events, I'm pretty sure you've all seen these crowds of zombies with their hands up, and whenever you see that, somebody's throwing shirts in the crowd, which helps. It helps get people at your booth. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it helps. And basically, I recommend making any kind of merch, any kind of product related to your game. We made plushes, pins, shirts. I made that toast plushie. And you can give these away, and players who are really into your game are gonna freaking love these things. And if you can't afford to make these things, you can mail some companies. There are a lot of companies at events that are trying to get their product out, and if you tell them you have a booth showing your game and you might want to use their product as a prize, they will be more than happy to help you out. Tournaments bring a lot of eyes to your booth. The cool thing about this is that you don't necessarily have to plan for it. If you just have a marker and some cardboard, you just do this, and a huge wave of people will be at your booth, and it's really, really cool. So as a cool example, at PAX East, my friends from Juicy Beast, they did this cool thing where they also had a similar party game. And after the 4 players played the match, the winner was matched up against a very difficult AI bot. And if the player won against the AI bot, everybody looking at the screen got a Steam key, which was a really, really cool idea. So I shamelessly ripped this off and tried it at a small local event out of curiosity. And this is how it looked like when that happened. And I think this is freaking awesome. So that's really cool. And this guy was really excited. So yeah, you can do that. Now regarding spectators, spectators are super important because you can only have so many computers at an event showcasing your game on, so people will have to wait in line to play your game. And you want to make sure that waiting time is as short as possible because spectators attract more spectators. So you want as many of them as possible at your booth. But the problem with this is that spectators have a really short attention span, and you have a really short time frame to grab their attention. And I was thinking, how can I show this in a meaningful way in a talk? So what I did is, at Gamescom, I just stepped away from my booth, and I recorded random people walking by my booth. And then in post-editing, I added a number above their head, showing the number of seconds they looked at my booth. And this was, look how the numbers go behind other people. Like, this took me forever. But yeah, in this case, it was under 5 seconds, and it just walked off. Here's a different example. These two guys walked up to my booth. He was wearing like a Sony hat, so yeah. That's under 10 seconds. And this is the last one, and it's my favorite example. It's just these girls passed by, and I panned to show the booth, and then back to them, and they're gone. So I couldn't even set this up if I wanted to. So the point is, they have a super short attention span, and you have to give them something to do. So what I did is I made these prints with the characters' outlines on them. Also, if you can print something in Japanese, it looks professional as fuck, so do that. But what it basically says is that if you draw a character and you post it on social media, you get a chance to win a 4-pack for the game. And this worked out incredibly well, and that was mind-blowing because I wasn't expecting this to happen. And we always ran out of these kind of prints, and we got a lot of them. And we built a wall out of them. And when I say we got a lot of them, I mean we really got a lot of them. And this is like 10% of how many I have back at home. I can just wallpaper my entire room with them. And we got some really fucking amazing ones that I would never be able to do them myself. But the best part about this is that people are really creative. So we got the best ones, our favorite ones, and we actually made them into in-game playable characters. And that first one, the one with the butt, I have it on my chest as a metal pin. I freaking love that one. It's my favorite character. So I love having these two-way conversations with the players. I think it's really, really cool. Here's another quick tip. Events are amazing for feedback. And if you have a booth, you can get an amazing play test kind of thing. It's just make sure you observe. Don't interfere. Because when you're there next to the player and they know you are the developer, they're going to completely change the way they talk about your game. So just stand back and observe how people play, if they check the controller to see where the buttons are and all that thing. So it's really, really helpful observing. And a fun thing I do is just I blend into the crowd and I hear people go like, oh man, this game sucks. And I'm like, I know, right? Tell me why. And I take notes. And also, when you talk with somebody, this is just a pet peeve of mine. When you talk with somebody and they give you feedback, please don't try to justify that feedback. Don't go like, oh, it's like that because I didn't have time last night and I know I'm going to change this, blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. Just take in the feedback and you figure out what you do with it afterwards. Don't try to justify things. Elevator pitch. You've heard so many things about elevator pitches. I'm not going to reiterate all of those things. You already know you have to wake up in the middle of the night and know those 2 sentences about your game. But what I'm going to say is that when you showcase at an event, you will repeat yourself a lot because you've perfected those 2 sentences about your game and you are going to tell them to a lot of players. And for you, it's going to feel super weird because it's the same thing over and over again. But for them, it's the first time they're hearing it, so it's perfectly okay. You will repeat yourself a lot. It's perfectly fine. So yeah, talk to people. The reason why you are at an event is to meet people. Everybody is as scared as you are. We're all game developers. We're all gamers. It's super easy to start a conversation. Here's a really cool thing you can do. Introduce your friends. When you meet somebody, always introduce your friends because it's going to make it so much easier for them, and you're going to be super grateful when somebody does that for you and you don't have to introduce yourself anymore. And regarding your friends, ditch them. What I really like about these events is you are literally in the same building with one of the most amazing people from this industry, And if you waste that time with your friends, you won't really gain anything. So go out there and like talk to people and meet new awesome people and make awesome relationships, because you have time after the event to hang out with your friends. So it feels like wasted time if you spend it with your friends, in my point of view. Yeah, while I was talking about parties, like meeting people in other places, huge hotels at other events like the W at GDC, that's also a great place to just meet great people and talk if you're looking for things like investments or like publishers or stuff like that. So yeah, talk. Now, the event is done. You got home. What are some of the things you do? First up, I advise you edit your footage. Assuming you recorded most things, you put all of those in some coherent videos. You can have multiple videos based on each event, or you can have like use them in your trailer. Yeah, that was weird. I basically use reaction shots from people in the actual Move or Die trailer. This was from Japan. You can probably tell it's Japan because there's going to be like a huge, there we go, it's Japan. So as an example of this is yesterday I just walked around with my camera and I took some footage, and last night when I was supposed to be sleeping, I made a short edit of yesterday. So it looks like this.
Anybody wonder what you're up against? You get cut that, it's your best defense. You just relent, you're too bright not to do it. I go on that and on a mother again. On the topic of Ronda Lot's tongue, I should mention that it's not till it comes undone, and as it unravels, the cluck emits the discipline in your ear, stuck in your head like a hit goes. Tut, 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 tut. Listening to hit records led to your sad state. You ought to take talk serious, they put it to patent, it'll seep in. That's my supposition, and I suppose in subjunction, if it did, I'd listen to what you said next. For once, it's imperative. Take off the hat, the dunce needs it back. And front's on track to get brains. Seek now to retrain the nerdcore refrain goes. Tut, 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 everybody.
So yeah, edit your footage. Even though I wasn't showcasing anything here, I thought that was cool. It's kind of my thank you for Amaze for bringing me here. But yeah, it's super awesome. Business cards. I'm pretty sure you got a lot of business cards after an event, and I'm hoping you gave out a lot of business cards. So it's time to follow up and make sure you wait around 3 or 4 days after the event. I noticed that's the optimal time because people take some time to get home and get back to their regular schedule. So 3 or 4 days is kind of okay. Postmortems, right? Postmortems about your experiences at events, because a lot of people are interested in getting into this, and it's really intimidating going blind into it. So if you read other people's experiences, it's going to help you a lot, and talk about how you got there, the prices, like the process, how it felt being on the show floor. Because it's really hard finding these things, and it's your way of giving back to the community, and I think it's amazing. Contest winners, if you had any contests where the winners were announced after the event, make sure you do that, because we forgot to do that, so that's not a good idea. So yeah, you're done. That's the good part. It's done. You're back home. What's the thing you do now? You check your sales spikes, because you got a lot of sales by showcasing your game at an event, except you didn't, because that's not how shit works. And a lot of developers have this misconception, and I was thinking, how can I get rid of this annoying misconception? And basically I went to some developer friends and I asked them for their Steam sale charts, which I think you're not supposed to show, but hey, here are some examples. Here's Brigador. Early access, there was a discount, huge spike. Sale, again, a discount, huge spike. That's PAX East in the middle there. It doesn't make a bump. This is the chart for Move or Die. You can see we went at South by Southwest, PAX East, E3, Gamescom, PAX West, nothing. all those spikes are discounts in the price. Here's Stardew Valley. That's the release. I had to zoom in to show you PAX West. And the day before PAX West, they got more sales. So yeah, here are some other ones. Again, you can take photos of these. I can send you the slides. The point is, events won't get you these spikes, but they get you something else, something that I think is much better. For example, I went to an event, and I was staying in a very shady GDC hotel, and I met James Portnow from Extra Credits, and then some time passed, and he introduced me to a publisher that I ended up talking with. So that's awesome. I went to an event and I met a cool guy named Lester, which happened to be a filmmaker. And then some time passed and he ended up coming in Romania to film a section in his movie Game Loading because I met him there. This is how my desk looked, by the way. I went to a different event, CEGC, and I met a cool guy named Chen Li, which happens to be a developer from China. And some time passed, and he helped me localize Move or Die in simplified and traditional Chinese. I can keep going. I went to PAX East, and I met Northernland. And because I had a booth there, he tried out the game, and then he ended up making a whole series on the game, which helped a lot with exposure. Again, at PAX East, somebody from Giant Bomb stopped by the booth, and then they liked the game, so they mentioned it on their panel, which was apparently quite a huge deal, and they also made 2 videos about Move or Die after the event. I ended up on national TV because I went to events. Move or Die ended up being playing in some cinemas, in Game Cinema in Berlin. I ended up giving a lot of interviews because I went to events. Co-optional talked about Move or Die because they saw it at an event. And basically, I am here today because I met some of the organizers at an event. So my point is, events won't get you sales. They'll get you awesome relationships. And with that in mind, get ready for the next event. Thank you. Thank you. I think we have 10 minutes for questions. If there are any questions, go for it.
Hey.
Hi, great. Thanks for the great talk.
Thank you.
The question I have is, you said you're quite a small team, and we have the same problem that we're just 2 people, and whenever we go to an event, we meet awesome people, and I think we get a lot of value out of it, but while we're doing that, we can't really work on our game. And how do you balance that? How do you balance like actually making your game and making it better and getting exposure for it?
I don't. Development completely stops for us when we go to an event. Most of the time, we were 2 guys working on the game. So when we went to events, literally just development stopped, which is kind of the price you have to pay. But it depends. Right now, we're like 6 of us, so we can afford to like offload some of the work. But it's all down to you if you decide that you're willing to make that trade-off, like get the benefits of going to an event versus working on the game. And also, it depends on how long you're staying at an event. You can go like just during the event, and that's usually like, what, 2 or 3 days? So yeah, we don't. It's up to you if you think it's worth it or not. Yes?
Hey. So you talked a lot about the stage when you already, you have a booth, maybe have several people there, staff, you're already big, I would say. So what about the stage before that when you don't have a booth and maybe, you talked about talking to players, but also to press, publishers, distributors, whatever. So how should you do the stage before that? Should you have a laptop with a build and try to show it holding it? Should you have a tablet and just a video on it, or business cards or codes,
It depends.
When you don't have a booth.
It depends. So you don't necessarily need a booth to take advantage of what an event has to show. Having a booth helps in the sense that Northernland and Giant Bomb ended up doing all those things with Move or Die because they had the chance of playing it right there on the show floor. But most of the value comes from talking to people. So you can just go to an event as a visitor, and you can take advantage of that. Some people don't even have tickets to the event. They just hang outside and meet people there. That's also an option. But yeah, you can have your game on a tablet or on a phone, or like have a trailer. It's up to you to decide if that's too pushy or not, because there will be a lot of people who go like, hey, I have a game, check it out. And you're gonna be like, nah, no, thank you. But yeah, it helps. And have codes, print codes. In my case, we make tiny business cards with the codes on them, and they look like this. And again, it's super professional compared to like writing it on a napkin. By the way, if any of you want those, just tell me and I'm gonna give them to you. So yeah, have something to show. Have something to show, and you're gonna get there. And you can get a booth without having a prior booth, without having experience with that. You just apply to one of those curated groups, and you go to an event, and you learn by doing. But that might cost. Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
One quick thing that I want to add for before the event is practice standing, because you do that a lot at events, I guess, so get used to standing a lot and train your legs. But one question that I have is, how do you justify the huge expenses of the big events?
How do I justify what?
The huge expenses of the big events.
So the bigger the event is, the more important people will be there. And basically, that's how I justify it. It's up to how much you take advantage of it. Because if you get a booth and you get the biggest booth and you just sit there and you don't talk to anybody, it feels like you wasted that whole investment. So you have to like get out there and meet people. And again, you don't need a booth. You could go as a visitor and go about it that way. But it all depends. You can lower the costs in various ways. Sure, if you go all out and get the biggest booth and get the TVs from the venue and have them print your stuff, yes, you're gonna pay a lot of money. And that's why when we first started, and even now, I'm looking into ways to like minimize those costs. For example, right now I could be staying at like fancy hotels, but I stay in weird Airbnbs where the hosts don't answer their phones. Because yeah, I think that's cool, and it helps because it's an indie mindset, trying to be as frugal as possible. But there are ways. I managed to get into E3 through Indicate, which were super helpful, and I almost spent no money just getting there. So that's super helpful. So look for opportunities and for groups organizing these kind of events. Thank you. Any other questions? Cool. Oh, one more.
At what point into making your game you started going into booth and
now,
stuff?
If you have a game, you should go to events right now. As long as it's slightly presentable and you have something to show, I think it's the time to go to an event and like get your game out there, because we're all developers, we work on our games, and there are tiny babies, and we're like, oh no, they're not ready to go out there yet, and you end up in this endless loop of, oh, that one more thing to add before I show it. But no, you should like show it right now, because people are understanding, and they understand that it's a work in progress, and most of them are gamers, and you can explain, oh yeah, that animation is not finished, and they're gonna accept that, and they're okay with that. So as soon as possible, I would say, don't keep waiting, get it out there as soon as possible, because it's part of marketing. Cool. Well, I guess that was it. Thank you again for having me, and I hope this was helpful.